I will place economic stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. This will mean difficult decisions to come.
Meet Rishi Sunak, the investment banker turned politician who has become the Prime Minister amid the economic crisis in the UK. During his campaign, time and again, the 42-year-old talked about his plans to combat inflation and fix the economy.
This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level.
As he takes charge, what is the economic challenge Rishi Sunak has to face?
If you look back from 2008 global financial crisis, you'll find that UK's economy had largely stagnated. It had grown at a very small pace. And that was one of the reasons why India also overtook the United Kingdom as the fifth largest economy. And there was this large long-term stagnation that UK was facing. And the other thing that is of massive importance here is that in the wake of the COVID impact and then the war in Ukraine, two things happened. One, in trying to help out people in the wake of the COVID disruption, UK government's budget and borrowing levels rose, which happened across the world. So that was not something unique. But especially with relation to the war in Ukraine and Europe's and UK's dependence on the energy imports from Russia, that meant that there was a massive spike in inflation. So you have economic stagnation, you have a phase where the inflation is at a historic high, double-digit inflation, food inflation at around 14-15%. And at that time, government's budgets are already overstretched because of the COVID impact. So that's the kind of sort of difficult mix that UK finds itself in this phase. Before Liz Truss government came and did something that totally turned the whole scenario into a mini financial crisis.
She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her restlessness to create change. But some mistakes were made.
What the Liz Truss government did was that, oddly enough, in trying to boost growth and contain inflation and trying to be bold, what the Liz Truss government did was basically, on the one hand, actually gave price caps, energy price caps for the population for 2 years. So they said, you will not have to pay beyond a certain point and the government will take care of the bills on energy. And on the other hand, in trying to boost growth, they cut taxes even for the richer folks in UK. But the end result was that because none of this increased spending was out of any new sources of revenue, the Liz Truss government was essentially asking for more borrowings from the market. And the markets got spooked because at a time when your growth is iffy and inflation is high, you're leaving people with more money, exactly opposite to what the central bank of UK was trying to do, Bank of England. And the government's finances were in a mess. So the investors got spooked and they sold UK assets like pound sterling or the government bonds. Nobody was willing to lend money to the government. And so what happened was that the rate at which government borrows money went up, skyrocketed. And with that skyrocketing, it also meant that anybody in the economy, in the UK economy, who was a borrower, found that their mortgage rates went up. So it created an all-round problem and a sort of a financial crisis, and the Bank of England had to step in to save the crisis. It is very clear that Rishi Sunak's ascent essentially is because of the fact that at this precise moment, UK needs economic stability, and economic focus and economic crisis is the essential crisis that UK is facing. And that is why Rishi Sunak even though he has not been directly elected as a prime minister, or perhaps does not enjoy as much support within even the Conservative Party rank and file, has been chosen as the leader for the Conservative Party. I would say there are basically four big issues facing Rishi Sunak. The first is inflation, and Sunak has been talking about this for a very long time. He's said it, and very correctly, that there can be no stability, there can be no economic growth without inflation being brought under control. And it's very important to understand, because without inflation being under control, there is no predictability to economic behavior. We do not know what will be the prices of the inputs and outputs that we create. We do not know whether a particular commodity that we believe is for X rupees today, or X dollars, or X pounds, will be for X, or X plus 2, or X plus 9. So it is very important to bring inflation down. So that is his first main challenge, and he has been very vocal about it. A related thing with this is the broader cost of living crisis, because it is one thing to have inflation in, say, food or in, say, energy prices, but what we are seeing in UK is a cost of living crisis, which is to say that while the prices have gone up for a lot of things, salaries may not have increased. Inflation going up 10%, 14% on many commodities has not actually led to salaries actually going up. And so you're finding a lot of trade unions and a lot of workers actually resorting to strikes in health, education, railways. In many areas, you're finding a lot of people actually striking and asking for better pay. So the other big challenge for Sunak is to figure out how can he deal with this cost of living crisis, because with the budget being constrained, and he will have to figure out how to cut spending on certain areas, apart from how to raise money from certain areas. But spending cuts would essentially mean lower salaries, or perhaps no increase in the salaries for a lot of essential workers, say nurses' salaries. And that is all becoming a massive crisis. So one is inflation, the other is cost of living crisis that he has to deal with. The third big challenge for Sunak has to be growth, but that's maybe not the most immediate challenge, because right now the main thing is to first control inflation. But one of the salient things to understand is that Liz Truss beat Sunak in the leadership campaign because she ran on the whole promise of growth. UK has been in a long-term stagnation, and there is no way government finances or salaries or any of these matters will be solved in a sustainable manner until unless UK regains its growth momentum. So his more medium-term challenge would be to figure out a way not just to control, contain government finances, get them into shape and reduce inflation, but also figure out a strategy for growth. And lastly, I would say is a more immediate challenge, the most immediate challenge. But given the political uncertainty in UK, where we've seen 3 prime ministers now in the last 50 days, this is a very crucial one, which is that by the end of the month, Rishi Sunak's government has to lay on the floor of the parliament a medium-term fiscal plan, which is to say, tell markets and everybody in the world what is the growth or what is the way in which they will handle the economy. And this is very important because we've seen how markets can react if they do not trust you, if they do not buy into your larger plan. And so his first challenge is to give a very robust, a sensible medium-term fiscal plan of government finances, how he's going to manage it, while also taking into care order issues of inflation and cost of living crisis. Apart from the economic crisis, Sunak is also facing a tremendous political crisis, because the opposition Labour Party, which is leading in every possible poll, is asking for a straight election. And it is very clear that if elections were held today, the Conservative Party, the Tories, will actually lose, and quite badly. And they've been in power since 2010. They've sort of gone through the Brexit vote, and they've been trying to hold on. But this is an existential crisis that the Tories are facing. And what has happened is that, and one thing that Sunak has also talked about, is that this is the time to unite the party, because what has happened with these repeated changes in the leadership of the Conservative Party, with Boris Johnson being booted out, then Liz Truss losing the faith and favor, and now Sunak being brought in, it's a very heavily divided house, the Conservative Party. And there's an element here about Sunak being the first Asian British to sort of be made the prime minister, which is very crucial, because there is a certain sentiment in the society or in the rank and file of the Conservative Party, which says that he has not been elected, and that element of not being perhaps as liked as, say, a Boris Johnson or any of the previous prime ministers is an issue that he has to deal with. So he has to bring the party together and then lead that united party against a very formidable opposition in Labour Party.